Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the Come Up Podcast, guys. This is episode number 5, and this week we are talking about mental health when it comes to a fighter. You see, when the lights go down and the crowd fades and the roar turns into a silence, that's when the real work begins, or at least the real fight. No cameras, no crowds, no gloves, just your thoughts, your body aching in ways that nobody gets to see. Some drown it out, some embrace it, some plan it, some regret it. You wrap your hands not for the fight, not for the fight tonight, but for the one tomorrow, for the grind, not for the grind, no one's applause. This is the forgotten part, the quiet, brutal hours that shape us, that break you, that build you in all at once. The adrenaline fades, but the fight never stops. We're here today. We got our resident fighter, Kalik McCalman. He's kind of our go-to guy when it comes to the amateur game. He's 11-1, correct? 11-1. Yeah. You can speak up. It's all right. It's allowed. We're on Rumble. You can say whatever you want. And we're just going to try and get into it. We're just coming off our interview with the news, and we're kind of on a high note. But this one's going to get kind of more into what the fighter thinks after everything is said and done. How they're feeling, once everybody leaves, once they're on their way home. Would you like to go ahead and get into that?
Yes, sir. So the first thing we want to do is I'm Coach Leo. Those of you that are just tuning in and don't know who we are Wolves Den Boxing. This is the Come Up Podcast. We have Coach Adam here in the middle here. I'm right next to him on his left, which will be on you guys if you're seeing on the right. I'm Coach Leo, and then we also have our fighter Kalik McCalman here. He is 11-1, and he's pretty sharp. And we just kind of want to just jump right in. This is the Come Up Podcast, and we like to talk about the things that really nobody really talks about in boxing. Like how these fighters are treating their bodies, how their emotions, before and after a fight, right? Because there is a difference. So, we figured on this podcast, we bring Kalik McCalman, because we're coaches, right? I had fought, I fought as well. And I do know a lot of what we may talk about today, but every fighter's different, right? And we're here to try to see, as far as Kalik, how does he feel, like before a fight. So I think that we just kind of want to jump right into it. The things that I don't think people talk about, right? It's all about the emotional feelings. Kalik, I'm gonna ask you, how do you feel right before a fight? There's so many fighters out there, and everybody. We've thrown many events, and we have fighters that are here, and some you may never find, right? They hide in the corners. They it's almost like, listen, it's fight time, and no one, the person that is supposed to fight, he's either hiding in the corner, or he's nervous and scared. And now that we have a fighter here, being that he has a good record, and he definitely understands what it's like to be in the spotlight. As far as fighting, and he's done it multiple times. So I kind of want to, address a fighter and give you guys a little more of, the fighter's perspective. So, Kalik, my question to you is, when you're in a fight, before the fight, what are how are your emotions? I will be passing you the mic in a minute, but how are your emotions? How are you feeling? What are your thoughts? Going into a fight, the weeks before, the days before, the training before, kind of let us know, how do you feel, like right before a fight?
Well, the weeks, days leading before a fight, I try to just focus on training. So there's no real thoughts happening. You just got to focus on the task at hand, what needs to be worked on. The day of the fight, there's pressure, but it's the type of pressure that you need. There's expectations that you have for yourself, and you're never really particularly nervous, or at least I'm never really nervous for the guy I'm facing. I'm worried for my performance. I just don't want to win in a terrible way, because winning needs to happen. It just needs to happen dominantly. But before a fight, there's pressure. I'm nervous, scared. I'm anxious. I want to get in there. I want to get this going, and you're always gonna feel it moments, seconds before you step into the ring, and then when you step into the ring, it's just, it just all disappears. You know, you're only in that moment, and it just feels euphoric.
Yeah. You said that you're not really thinking about anything other than the task at hand. Now, you're not the typical fighter that's only done boxing. You've competed in other sports, other combat sports before, correct?
Yeah, I have. The thing is, though, is when you're only focusing on the task at hand, you can't really bring outside factors into whether it's a wrestling match, a boxing match, we're playing football, basketball. You can't bring outside factors into any type of competitive experience.
Well, what I'm asking is, you have a lot more experience than a lot of other guys in competition. Maybe not other guys, that because when it comes to boxing, the guys have been doing this since they were 8, 9 years old. But do you think somebody that's stepping into the ring for the very first time at 21 versus somebody that's competed before might be going through something other than what you're thinking about?
As far as I know, from my experience for doing it for so long, everything feels the same. You just know how to handle it a little bit better. You're always going to be nervous. That never goes away. You just know how to deal with it better. Sometimes the best thing you could do is just, if you're not going to have confidence in yourself, you just have to have confidence in your training, the coaches, the people around you that are going to do the right things by you. And sometimes that makes the pressure takes the pressure off a bit. But as far as I know, everyone feels the same thing. Whether you're new or you've been doing this for years, it's all the same. You just learn how to deal with it a tad bit better every day, every competition.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, those of you that don't know Khalik, he wrestled prior to boxing, and you know the backstory is he came into the gym, and he asked us. Is actually a funny story. He actually came into the gym and asked us, "Can you guys train me?" And we actually told him, "Listen, if you want us to train you, you need to stand in front of the mirror for 1 month straight, and just." I believe it was work on your 1-2 and your head movement, and
Not even the head movement, just moving.
yes,
On the 1-2.
you know, just moving with the 1-2, and you know, he literally was in front of the mirror for a month straight, and you know, as
2 months.
you know, according to him, it was 2 months, but it definitely was a month. But the truth is that you know, as coaches, we are looking for people that really want to do this. You know, if you, as a coach, if you don't want to do this, then, you know, we understand that, you know, you could just do the workout, whatever the case may be. But the main thing is definitely, the main thing is definitely, you know, he put in the work that he needed to. And then from there, you know, after the month, him just standing in the mirror, you know, us as coaches, we saw that he really wanted this, you know, and that's, you know, sometimes you go to certain gyms and, you know, you go in there and you're like, you know, I want to fight. And it's like, listen, man, there's a lot that comes with this, you know, just fighting. You need to show these coaches that you want to fight. You need to show them that you're willing to fight and that you have, you know, at least the heart to come back, even if you do get beat up or if the training gets a little hard. But the main thing I want to talk about is, with Khalik, is the transition from wrestling to boxing. Okay, that's real key, because those of you that don't know, he was a wrestler prior to this. He wrestled in college, and I believe when I was talking to you, you said you were trying to be a wrestler for the Olympic Jamaican team. And what exactly happened with that? And also your transition of how you went from wrestling to boxing. Us as coaches, it was a struggle, but you know, trying to get, you know, your feet right, because, you know, wrestling, it's more of grabbing and, you know, sliding on the floor and, you know, doing certain moves to, you know, take down your opponent. As for boxing, you have to stand up and fight and have your, you know, your foot movement a certain way. So if you can, let me know, how was it transition wise, transferring over, and also just how you was able to take care of all that.
Transition wise, it was like night and day. Getting hit is completely getting punched in the face is completely different from getting tossed on the mat.
100%.
And, it still hurts at the end of the day. All of it hurts. It's just a new feeling, but because of my wrestling experience, I was able to kind of weather the storm a bit easier. Not too many people like getting hit in the face. No one likes getting hit in the face. It all hurts. All of it hurts. The training was a little bit easier, but it was being in the ring that was really the hard part compared to being on the mat. Being on the mat, I was doing this since I was 4, so I was really comfortable with being on the mat. I could flow better. Even now, when you see me mess around with some of the guys that come in here that used to wrestle, it looks natural for me. Versus with boxing, it's starting to become a little bit easier to look at now, but it's still a little choppy. Foot movement was definitely a big thing. In wrestling, you have to stay more grounded. In boxing, you have to be a little bit more fluid. And right now, you're starting to at least show me how to be more fluid in the ring, box a little bit more, make every fight a little bit easier, regardless of how I fought in previous fights. One of the biggest transitions, though, compared to everything, is mainly the mental toughness that it requires. They're both very hard sports, but in boxing, you kind of have to show less of a straight face. In wrestling, you can kind of hide it a bit. You can kind of hide it in other stuff. You can kind of take more breaks, be on the floor, hold on a little bit more, post, stall out a bit more. But in boxing, at the end of the day, if you're losing, you don't know if you're losing, but someone's telling you losing. You got to fight. In wrestling, you can kind of look at the scorecards and see, okay, yeah, I'm losing. I got to pick it up. I can tone it down. In boxing, you just never know. You just got to go out there and fight.
So, one of the things that you've said to me, I know that you've said to me, I'm pretty sure said to Coach Leo, is that on the mental side of things, is that you miss your wrestling body, right? The wrestling physique is very different from the boxing physique. Can you go into that and how you deal with the difference in that transition as well?
Well, with boxing, compared to with wrestling, I was definitely a bit more flexible. You needed to be a little bit more flexible to kind of have the advantage in certain positions in boxing. But wrestling, but that's not to say you can't be flexible in boxing. With boxing, it's a little bit more hip and upper body movements. With wrestling, I had a really big back, strong legs. I was very grounded with everything that I did with wrestling, and I was hard to move. I was a brick wall, which gives me the advantage in wrestling when it comes to boxing when it comes to clinching. But as time went on, my weight stayed the same, but my physique changed. I became a lot more slender, a lot bigger upper body, well, especially in my chest and shoulders, versus in wrestling, it was my back and rear delts that were the biggest things. I was way, way more comfortable with going backwards in boxing because I was always confident I'm way more comfortable going backwards in wrestling because I was way more confident in my throws. Versus in boxing, when I'm not really so comfortable going backwards because, at the end of every punch, it just hurts more. So moving forward is just the best scenario. The physique also is another part of the physique is the amount of strength training I did. I was always lifting to be stronger in wrestling, but in boxing, I'm more trying to lift to be faster. Especially at the weight I am now, when the weight cut that happens, you build a muscle differently. It's just so different. You build muscle in wrestling to be sturdy, but in boxing, you build muscle to be faster and also sturdy. Your muscles have to be able to absorb damage when you're not fast enough to use your head movement. Your forearms have to be big enough to block. Your shoulders have to be big enough to roll a punch. Your neck has to be just as big in wrestling and boxing to either absorb a punch or bridge off or hold your weight plus somebody else's weight when they're gonna take you down for a pin. So the training it's similar, but you definitely Like if you did doing both, it changed my body significantly.
So those of you that don't know, you know, as coaches, we can, you know, if you're walking on the street, and this is a little side note, right? If you're walking on the street and you always wanted to know the difference between, like, you'll know a boxer for one reason. So Khalik, if you don't mind, just put your hand. So as he was the other hand, right? As he was talking, just put it normal. As he was talking, people don't realize it. So in boxing, we use hand wraps and we're constantly punching, right? I have the same thing. If you guys notice, like if you leave your hand regular, right on his knuckle here, okay? Right here, right there, right where the middle finger, the knuckle with the middle finger, it's always a darker spot, right? So those of you that, if you know anything about boxing, fighters tend to have their middle finger, their knuckle darker than any other knuckle. Why is that? Because one, that's the first knuckle that always hits the bag. Obviously, if you're throwing your punches correctly. Two, you have your hand wraps on, and obviously they do tend to get dirty, and you know you're constantly throwing punches. So like, those of you that don't know, if you're walking on the street and you just see a random person and that knuckle's really dark, the majority of times they are fighters. They're a boxer. That was just a little side note, just to let you guys know on as far as fighters. Some of them have it on two knuckles. If you even see mine's right here on the side, you'll see like how dark the middle finger, like the knuckle gets. That's because you're throwing tons of punches. You're hitting the bags, and if you start seeing on his hands, he has multiple like darker bruises on his knuckle. Those things do not go away. They stay there. It's like a stain that you develop over the course of time, especially if you're a hard puncher. But regardless, that was just a little side note. But where we at, Adam?
Talking about the mental.
So the mental game in boxing is one of the things that people don't really talk about much. Chad, if whoever is watching, feel free to write whatever you want. Write a message. Maybe a question you ever wanted to ask a fighter. Like we said, Khalik he's in it. He is an amateur fighter. He is 10-1, 11-1. We lost count. What is it? 10-1. Yes, 10-1. I'm his coach. I don't even know the record because again, we win so much. We don't even worry about like the records. We just worry about who we're fighting and are they, can they be better than us so we can get that experience. But we really just we want to talk about the things people don't talk about, right? So another thing, a lot of things that come up, people talk about the adrenaline dump, right? Like, there's so much adrenaline these fighters have. Think about it. Fighting is like, it's.
Most people go through in everyday life. Most people that have a situation come up where they're in an argument with somebody, you have that fight or flight mode, and you're overwhelmed with adrenaline, and you're not really sure what's going to happen next, and you either tense up or you're ready to run, and that's typical. But with a fight, with a fighter, whether you're sparring or you're hopping into your first bout, you can't run. So you get this overwhelming amount of adrenaline that circulates through you and it just pumps through you. But after that fight, the adrenaline drops, right? After everybody experiences it whenever they, you're on the subway and you bump into a guy and he gets in your face and all of a sudden you're just jacked up. Once that adrenaline is gone, once that situation is no longer there, and you realize how close you were to getting into a fight. Whereas a fighter, you actually are, and you're dealing with, in the midst of the fight, that adrenaline kind of keeps you from feeling the pain, the physical pain, the emotional pain, the mommy, what did I do wrong to end up in this place in my life pain. But after it's gone, you have to deal with all that. And as a fighter, what are you? What goes through your mind at the end of the day? And once that fight is over, once you've either raised your hand or that one time that you've had where you didn't raise your hand as a winner, what goes through your mind? What do you do?
It's mainly just relief, like it's over. win or lose, it's just relief. Usually you're happier when you win, but when I win, I'm more sporadic. I kind of hand whatever medal or belt or trophy I have to Leo, and then I just kind of rush to the bathroom, change, and then we're out. Losing was the same way. I kind of just took my silver medal, gave it to Coach T, and then got dressed, and then we're out. But it's just relief at the end of the day that it's over. And then as time goes on, like as 5 minutes, 10, 30 minutes, half an hour passes, you kind of reflect back on the fight. What you did wrong, what you didn't do, what you could have did better. But as far as I know, it is a different feeling. Winning feels good, but it's just that. It's just that. Losing though, I've come to realize I tend to focus more on that one loss than I do my 10 wins. 10 wins are nice, but it mean nothing in the grand scheme of things, because that one loss is more of it's a statement that there's someone out there better than me. Regardless of how the win happened, it was a statement that says someone thought they were better than me in that very moment. So at the end of each fight, I just feel relief. I'm calm. Reflect back on everything that's done. Just because you win or lose, it's always the same conversation. You could have did better. It's always the same conversation. You could have did better. You did this wrong. So when you're conditioned to that mindset, you kind of have like a 2-second memory with every fight. You win or lose, you kind of just move on from it, and then you go on to the next training. I find myself thinking every Saturday where we fight, I find myself thinking of that Monday, because I know that Monday is gonna be filled with, you did this wrong, and we have to start back all over again from the drawing board, all the way from the basics go up. So it's an everyday thing, and that's the mindset that I'm actually glad I have. You don't really take boxing so seriously, where a loss cripples you or a win bigs your head up to a point where you stop doing the things that you're supposed to do.
So on that note, Coach Leo, you tend to go to a lot more of these fights than I do, and we've both experienced losses with our fighters. We've both experienced it on national TV. The question I have for you is, when your fighter is sitting there in the silence of realizing that they lost, you can't bark at them and tell them how terrible they are. It doesn't work that way, right? Like that's a great way to lose a fighter. What is the best way to console them without letting them know that they suck?
Well,
because the reality is that this goes into the mental game of it. If they lose the mentality of it, of okay, let's work on the next fight, you lost them as a fighter, right?
100%. The truth is when it comes to whether you're a pro and amateur, I mean, obviously pro, it hurts a little more, because nowadays boxing has changed, right? It's all about that hope, right? Like the moment you lose it, a lot of these fighters nowadays, back in the day, like even in the 90s, and I was born in the 90s, and I realized that these guys, whether you're 20-5, 49-10, and what I noticed was, you have your stars, and then you have your fighters. And I'm realizing, the thing is, back in the day, everybody fought each other. And it didn't matter who you were. For the most part, it wasn't like it is now, where, some guys are ducking other guys. Sometimes they're not fighting. What was the question again?
What do you do when the guy's sitting there and he's upset?
Okay, perfect. So as far as a coach, our main thing is to have a game plan. You have a game plan and you stick with that game plan. As far as a coach, and his fighter, it gets frustrating when you do have a game plan that your fighter could achieve, but he doesn't do it, right? And that there's so many factors, whether you're fighting someone who's really strong, whether you're fighting somebody that, that has, he's a lot faster than you. There's a lot of different aspects, in the game, or maybe better foot movement than you, or just better than you overall. There's a lot of different tactics that stop your guy from performing or doing the game plan that you ask of him. But as far as, when these guys maybe don't do as well, you definitely don't yell at them. You definitely, because these fighters are human beings at the end of the day. So you kind of let them breathe a little bit, right? You take it in. You realize, okay, maybe we didn't win this fight. You take it in and you just go harder the next time. What I normally do is, it all depends on the comfortability of a fighter. Obviously, as an amateur coach, I'm yelling at you. When we're done, I'm going to tell you everything you did wrong. We're going to look at the film, and we're going to figure this out so that you can fix it. But why am I like that as an amateur coach? Because, amateur, obviously winning is great, and losing sucks. But, as an amateur coach, you understand that this is all practice for the big show. It's all practice before you go pro. So you're looking more for better technique, them being comfortable fighting under the lights, fighting with fans there, whether you're in a national tournament, whether you're just in a, in a sanctioned bout. But as a coach, you just make sure, as an amateur coach, I'm on their ass. Like, Killer Rose, what's going on, champ? We appreciate you coming on. But I think in the pro level, it's more like, okay, let them breathe, let's go back to the, let's go back to the, to the hotel room. Let's just think things over. And, I kind of go based on my fighter. If he's like, damn, coach, what happened? I'll start talking to him and let him know. And then you have fighters that are like, they lose they lose. And then the first thing is, oh, well, they start pointing the finger, and those are the fighters that I tend to stay away from, because the moment you point the finger, they point the finger and then they want to go elsewhere, So I think the truth is I kind of just sit back, go over everything, and just kind of see where their mindset is at. But knowing beings that us as coaches, we know our fighters very well. Some fighters I'll let them know, but others, we kind of talk when we get back. When we get back home, because we got a long airplane ride back wherever we're fighting at, or whether it's a drive or we're flying. And you kind of just let them breathe on it, because you got to remember, as a pro fighter, once they lose a fight, they build with so much anger, because maybe they didn't stick to the game plan. Maybe they could have done more. Maybe they didn't give it their all. And, it's like an emotional roller coaster that they go through. But as far as the amateur level, I'm on, every fighter's ass, because winning and losing in the amateur level, obviously you want to win. Obviously nobody wants to lose, but it's all part of it. It builds you up for the pro level. So I'm a little different when it comes to the amateur and the pros, but, it's all about a coach knowing their fighter and just, doing the right thing with it.
So along the lines of mental health and things like that, you also have to deal with the physical recovery after a fight or after sparring. Or what's your go-to when it comes to recovery? Are you a massage guy? Are you an ice bath guy? Are you just eat the pain? What's your thing?
Sleep.
That's a good one.
That's all you got. That's all you gotta do. Amateurs, you fight so often, you don't really have time to really sit down and marinate in the whole recovery thing. It's actually, you gotta do stuff beforehand, like stretching, yoga. I recently signed up for yoga. It's surprisingly, it's only been like a day. I'll have to see. We'll have to wait till September to see how that goes, how that works out. But just sleep and eating right. That's all. That's all you really need to do. Sleep, eat right, eat the proteins, the carbohydrates. Still make weight, but still eat the right things, and rest up when you can. And then when you're right back into training, you're right back into training. Pray that coach is just not on something that day.
Speaking of weight cuts, you're recently going down in weight, right? What were you, 184? We're trying to get you down to 143, 135. No, what is it? You're going down to 170, right?
165.
165
for tournaments.
For tournaments. That being said, what's the worst part of it?
Probably like the day before. Day before is always the worst because like that's the day you just can't do anything. You can't eat anything. You can't drink anything. You just kind of have to sit there and be.
Early in camp, do you push harder or ease up to avoid peaking too soon? We will get to that.
Yeah.
After Khalid says, finishes his answer.
Yeah. With weight, yeah, it's always usually the last day of the weight cut that's terrible because you just can't do anything. You can't eat. You can't train to take your mind off it. You just kind of have to probably walk to cut a little bit more water off, and that's pretty much it. Just wait for the next day, the fight to come, and then the day of weigh-ins, you are just anxious. You're so anxious to eat food that realistically, I don't even think about the fight sometimes. You just want to eat so badly. And it's always the worst thing. It's always the worst thing. The one weight cut I had where I was sick and we had to go to 170, that was the worst one because I was sick cutting weight. So, fortunately, I made the weight as I usually do, but that's usually the worst thing. That's usually how bad it gets.
How about the sleepless nights?
I've experienced that yet in boxing. Yet. I'm waiting for that cut. I'm waiting for that cut to come. It'll probably when I get a little bit bigger and I can't make 65 as easy anymore. That'll probably be the day that it happens. But I stay right around 75 just to make the week of the fight 10 pounds. Will make it so much easier. But when those days happen, I pray for me.
Definitely. All right, let's answer this question. So Killer Rosa puts, if your fighter's looking sharp early in camp, do you push harder or ease up to avoid peaking too soon? So that's a good question.
It's a little hard in amateurs because you're taking.
It's definitely a little harder in amateurs, but being that I work with a pro, for the most part, once you see them, I would say peaking, and looking as sharp as they do, we still got to train, right? My thing is just definitely keeping them sharp as far as the sparring. Because, it's not like in camp, you just, okay, he's great, he peaked, the hell with this, like, we're good. And then a month later or 3 weeks later go by and there's no sparring. I think, I wouldn't say we less up on the training. Some guys in training camp, they're doing strength and conditioning. They're sparring a lot. They're doing a little mixture of everything. But I think once they hit their peak, I believe just keeping them sharp, as far as sparring, and definitely looking at their weight. Like, okay, if a fighter peaked, right, is their weight off or is their weight, moving the way it's supposed to, right? So, you go based on, for at least for me, I tend to go based on the weight and see how they're going. If the question is like, if it's like 3 weeks before the fight, his weight is right, he's looking sharp, he's peaking, he's looking great. From there, I think I would just throw in a couple more spars in there just to keep him sharp. But when a fighter peaks early, it sucks as a coach because there's a lot of thinking you have to do. But I definitely think once he gets sharp, whether it's midway through camp, you just kind of, let them rest a little bit, keep them sharp as far as sparring. Maybe sometimes not even getting sparring where it's going to be rough, line up the sparring just a little bit. And then right, before the fight, we, put some good ones on them. And then from there, we just kind of keep moving forward. And, but everything for me when it comes to the actual training and the actual, in camp, I do go based on their weight. I've seen multiple coaches, that's the best thing about Wolves Den. We do have a lot of, we have mentors and we have people that we do speak to. It's, an experience from, and, I tend, but the way I would do it is I tend to go by the weight, see where they're at, see what they have to drop. Because you won't be at your peak if your weight ain't right? Like you can't be 10, 15, 20 pounds over and think you're going to have that same speed or think you're going to have, just think that you're going to be able to do certain things that you do, whether if you're fighting at 130, but you're 150 or 145. But if their weight is good, we just, definitely look for the good sparring. And then, as far as the training, we just go a little lighter, some pad work, a little bit of bag work. Don't do as much. But that's a wonderful question, Killer Rose. I really do like that. Just keep them coming if you have any more. But more or less, that's how I would go about it. Weight is a big factor. Sometimes, if you have a strength and conditioning coach and they're already so sharp, maybe less on the strength and conditioning. I tend to do a lot of swimming because he's really good on recovery. It's very good on recovery. And you can never have too much stamina. You always need more. And that's one of the things that I loved about Mayweather that people don't talk about is, I think one of his biggest attributes or his best strength is his stamina. This is a guy that fought 12 rounds, at the same pace, the whole fight, whether he was throwing more punches or not. But that was a wonderful question. I appreciate that. Hopefully that answered your question.
So moving on to the emotional roller coaster of fighting, Khalik, you haven't really gotten a chance to fight in your hometown as far as being in Jamaica or around family. But I mean, Wolf's Den is family. That's what we talk about all the time, right? But as far as being able to do what you do in front of your family and being able to perform like that, what goes through your mind after that last bell rings? What's that car ride home, whether you did well or you didn't, whether you won and you didn't perform as well as you would like to, or you lost, and there, are you thinking about, oh shoot, I hope my trainer doesn't drop me because I was so bad, or like what's going through your head?
You can't really think about it too hard after the final bell rings. Maybe after like an hour or so has passed, you can start thinking about. But like after every fight, you kind of just think there's too much happening around you for really to really have like a concrete thought. If you won, if you lost. My loss, I didn't think I lost the fight, but I know I didn't do enough to win. So.
Do you have any fights that you think you won, that you won, but you think you lost?
No, all my fights. The only fight that I really, really knew I didn't win at was the one that I lost. I know I didn't lose. I knew I didn't lose, but I just didn't do enough to win, or at least what I was supposed to do to win. And I don't think if my trainer will drop me or if anything crazy. If it does happen, that happens, I'll be tragic.
Sure would.
I'll be tragic. Or if I'm disappointing anyone. But the thing about it is, it's the only reason why is because none of that necessarily matters when you're in the ring.
I don't know. You've come back in here on a Sunday morning. I walk down into the gym. You have this puppy dog face on you. Like, oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, that's after. That's well after. The thing about it is after the fight, like directly after the fight, you kind of just have to focus on still being in there. Like, you have to win with grace and lose with grace. You can't throw a hissy fit after or before. You win the same way you lose, and you leave the ring, show your respect, get checked out, and on the car ride, that's when you can reflect. And if there are regrets, you got to make sure the next fight you have no regrets. That's pretty much it. If anyone feels some type of way about it, then that's unfortunate for them, but you can't really fight for somebody else. You can't really fight with the mindset that somebody else is watching. You have to fight because somebody is in front of you who wants to take you out, and you have to take them out.
So the question that came up is when you're looking for an opponent, are you aiming for real challenges, or do you sometimes hunt for those padded record fights to build your guy up?
They don't care about that.
When it comes to the amateurs, we want the guy to have a better record. We absolutely want to feed them to the wolves because, we're the amateurs is all about gaining the experience. It's not about padding that record. I don't care if you're fighting a guy that's 105 and 3 losses.
I'd love a padded record,
If you're going to fight somebody and win, you have to deserve the win. As a pro, it's a little different, especially when you're starting the guy out. We have the ability to send guys to other countries like Mexico or Costa Rica or anywhere else and get those easy wins to start building them, and then bring them back to America, and start really building them as a fighter, as a known fighter. But the reality is that when it comes to the amateurs, we're throwing them to the wolves. We want them to fight like a dog, because that's what we want to build you into, is a dog, not looking to pad a record. And we say this to our guys all the time: is, this is the amateurs. Gain your experience here. Don't, we have guys that fight 2-3 times a year, and as an amateur, that's ridiculously low. You're fighting at most 9 minutes. You can do that real quick. 9 minutes goes by real quick, and to do that 2 or 3 times a year is, why bother? Why bother? You're really just getting yourself hurt for no reason. Once you turn pro, you're if you're looking to get signed, I don't care if the promoter's going to sit there and go, I don't care if you have a flawless record of 5-0. I'd rather take the guy that's 50-50, because I know that he has the experience that when it comes to fighting under the bright lights around the crowd, this is like being home. And that's really the philosophy that we go with. I think the last guy that you fought, what was his record? Or it was supposed to be, but it got rained out. It was an outdoor fight, and in the middle of summer in the Northeast, so it ended up getting rained out. But he was like 32-5 or something like that, something ridiculous. And Coach Leo said to the matchmaker, he goes, "Hey, I have these 2 options for you. This one guy is 10-2, and this other guy is 30 and I don't know." So it was a ridiculous, well beyond what Kalik has. And Coach Leo said, we want the guy with the bigger record. We want him to have more experience, because we're going to test this diamond right here. That's really what it comes down to. I hope that answered the question, is that as an amateur, throw him to the wolves. As a pro, it's a little bit different of a game that you're playing. It's just the way that it's the way this game works. I hope that answered it. Kalik, what after your fights, are you big into talking to people? Are you too in your head to be able to go out and give out your thank yous to everybody that came over to you and congratulated you on your win, or told you it was a tough loss, or what? Or you just like, get me the fuck out of here, I want to go home, I want to go eat, go sulk in my bed?
Definitely the eating part, but I'm not necessarily I don't avoid people after a fight or before a fight. I'm just not a social person. I came there to fight, and there are people out there that can just turn on the media face like that, and I'm just not one of them. You gotta be. Some people are media trained, and some people just have it. But I don't mind talking to people after every win, loss, draw. I'm just actively not seeking it. As I said, I'm not too much of a social butterfly when it comes to after the fights. I came there to fight, so that's what I did. After a win, loss, I kind of just my task is finished. Everything else is kind of just extra. If I did get interviewed, that would be nice. It would be even better if they brought me food with it. Then it would be more incentive for me to be interviewed, take pictures, and all that stuff. I'll give my thank yous to the referees, the judges, regardless of a win or loss, the other coach, the fighter. That always happens, regardless how I feel. That always has to happen. Interviews don't happen too much in amateurs, but on the brief times they do. I've sat and talked to people. Photos, I have never taken any photos with any fans so far, as far as I can remember. But as I said, I'm just not that media trained to really actively seek it out that often.
A lot of that's going to be changing with the way that we're going to be running our amateur shows going forward. Killer Rosie has another question for you specifically. Pressure makes diamonds, and his final question for Kalik is: when you're exhausted in training or bouncing back from a loss, what's your why? What do you do to dig into to keep you going? So one of the things that you should know about Kalik is that he's always training. He trains about 4 times a day, maybe 3. For like if he wants to relax, that's true. But what's your why? Because that's a great question, because there have been times that you've come to both Leo and I, and you're like, I'm burnt. I'm absolutely burnt, and I know that we were doing fights back to back to back to back with you. So what's your why?
Money. Nah. Money. Nah, I'm kidding. No, not really.
I mean, so in amateurs, there's no money. Like, that's what makes you an amateur. So the reality is that's a real long game that you're playing. You still probably have about another year, 2 years before you turn pro. And even then, we're building you, right?
Yeah.
The other question that Killer Rosie said is that we're building you. So what's your why as an amateur?
Well, why as an amateur, and even as a wrestler, it stayed the same, because I never made any money wrestling. But there's a part of me that when I close my eyes, I can see a version of myself that's, in my eyes, perfect. And I need fighting to be the reason why that person, comes to life. I don't talk a lot in the ring. I don't talk a lot outside the ring. Yeah,
You don't talk a lot on the podcast, apparently. It's almost I've heard you speak.
I don't talk a lot, period. But my why for fighting is because the person who I see is constantly wins. That's all I do it for. I love fighting. No matter what. That's all. I love it. I love fighting. I wake up every day. I can't get sick of fighting. I've been doing it since I was 4, and I enjoy it so much. And winning constantly just makes me happy. Like, I can't do my regular day without at least fighting or doing something in combat. Win, lose, or draw, I just enjoy it. The anxiety, the fear, it gets me excited. It makes me excited to wake up every morning. And unfortunately, I'm not making any money now, but hopefully in the future that will change. It'll make it happen. But consistently, boxing just keeps me honest. It just keeps me honest. If I'm being weak, it will show in my fighting. If I'm feeling confident and strong, it will also show in my fighting. And there are days every day where you gotta look at the person across from you, and they're gonna intimidate you. They're gonna yell at you. They're gonna come in your face. And if you don't know in that moment that you're that guy, then you're always gonna lose. And I'm confident that I'm that guy constantly, regardless of if I get my ass kicked or not.
So one of the things that we tend to do with you is review footage after the fact. How's that going for you?
Terrible. All they do is cuss me out every time. See that jab you were doing? Your foot was like 2 centimeters to the left. It should be 2 centimeters to the right. Honestly, just leave boxing. Just leave the gym. No, I mean, filming is good. Some days you're gonna have bad days in a fight. Some days, more fights are gonna be grinders than usual, and you kind of have, as I said, you kind of have to have the memory of a fish when you're doing it. You kind of just have to forget those bad things and move on to the next thing. If you fight and you have a bad performance, You won the fight. You know you won the fight, but it just wasn't the prettiest win in the world. Realistically, all you gotta do, it's on you at that point to just clean up how you fight, or clean up how I fight. You know, I get it. I have a lot of perks about me with my head movement that keeps me winning a lot of times when it shouldn't happen. Like my second fight, it was just all head movement constantly. The punches were ugly, but because he didn't hit me and I hit him, I won. So your talent can carry you a long way. Mixed it with the fact that I train really hard. I've only been doing this for a year and some change. It hasn't even been 2 years yet. This November will be 2 years, which is insane.
It's been 2 years.
Yeah. This coming November is gonna be 2 years on the dot. Man, that's crazy. And that's 2 years of me of you and Leo training me.
That's a long time. Wow. So here's a question for you: is that it's important? You had said the money is a big part of it. How do you go about setting small goals to feel like you're accomplishing something each time? What do you consider a big goal versus a small goal to keep you mentally positive?
My goal in general is to be the best fighter in the world, which is it's basically chasing an imaginary dragon at that point, because as generation goes on, there's always going to be a better fighter. But my goal is to always be I would always love to be in the consistent conversation as the best fighter in the world. I don't want to be the GOAT. I don't want to be a figure like Muhammad Ali. I want to be known as the best fighter. Like, as generation goes on, the way how I fight can hang with the ones 50 years down the line. And that's a big goal to accomplish. But the best thing to do is to not really focus on it too much. Like, I rarely think about that goal, honestly. Each day is kind of like a goal. If I can get through the day and I have consistent training, then that's a win for that day. You got to kind of look at each step you take versus just staring at the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because you're going to miss a step and you're going to fall off, take a step back. It's good to look at the bigger picture. It's good to always take a look back at what you're trying to accomplish, but this is a game about inches. You always got to watch each step you take, make sure it's the right step. Look at each direction you're going to. Surround yourself with positive people that work hard, whether it's in boxing or something else. People who are encouraging, people who are always on a good mindset that they're winning, regardless of if they're your opponent or not. If they're staying positive, you can stay positive. If they're optimistic that they're gonna win, you have to be even more optimistic that you're gonna win. And that's just how you get better. That's how you get better mentally, and it will show physically, because you want to train. You want to train every day. It would make you want to do so much better every day. Winning, and that's where winning and losing doesn't really matter. It's all a part of the story that you're going to tell when you eventually reach the end of that goal. My goal, as I said, is just an imaginary dragon. It's something that I'll always chase, but it makes the journey more fun for me anyway.
There's more to this than just fighting, right? When it comes to the amateurs and then turning pro, there's a long time before you even start making any real money, right? You work a job, right? It's not a free for all. You have to pay your bills, you have to pay your gym membership, your coaching fees, things like that. And it doesn't stop. It's constantly a grind. So realistically, you're probably sleeping a lot less than most people that work a regular job and are not looking to do something else outside of this. That being said, how do you figure out how do you create a balance so that you're mentally stable, essentially, right? You're not is it just goal oriented where it's like, I need to do this so that I can become the greatest boxer ever, or is this, or is it like, because eventually it wears on you. So what goes through your head?
Sometimes you gotta talk your way through it.
Hi, Cal.
Most times you have to talk your way through it. Actually, you have to talk your way through it a lot of times. Going to your job and making money, but believe it or not, you kind of have to talk yourself out of falling into habit, because having a job, it's having something stable. It's so comfortable, and a lot of people choose comfortable out of convenience, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're given the opportunity to have a nice job that pays well, you can afford an apartment or a house, you can take care of your family, you need to prioritize what matters more in that moment. You have to choose, but as fighters, you kind of have to choose. It's a choice constantly to choose being uncomfortable, like whether you're working a double and you got to come back off and then train. That's a choice. You can go back home and go to sleep, rest, and realistically, who would blame you? I'm not even sure if your coaches would blame you that much, or other fighters would blame you. You can't condemn someone for putting their best foot forward when the only thing that's promised when you step in the ring is just pain. Like, you're gonna always just feel pain, whether you win or lose. It all hurts, no matter what. So it's a lot of talking yourself through it. You're making the conscious choice to always choose, I wouldn't say the worst case scenario, but you're not choosing the comfortable scenario, the convenient one, because that's how a lot of people fold. They choose the convenient way, and I just can't blame them for choosing the convenient way of things. Is when you don't choose the convenient way, it builds some grit, but if it doesn't work out, it also builds some regret. It's a double-edged sword.
I hear that. That definitely is a double-edged sword. So for fighters that are doing this and starting to realize that this is a really, really long game, unless they want to become a journeyman, in which case you're taking fights to build other people up and you're making money that way, it's still painful. What would you give? What kind of advice would you give to a fighter that's on their way up, that's questioning whether they should do this or not?
Just don't put pressure on yourself. Just enjoy the process. The process is fun. Fighting is fun. It really is a privilege to wake up and train every day. You have the opportunity to do this every day. So you can just, you fight. You do everything you can to fight, and it's a privilege to do it, because not everyone gets the chance to. Not everyone has the opportunity to. Not everyone has the talent to, the grit, discipline to wake up every day, train, go to work, have a clean diet. It's a privilege in itself, because it shows that you're different, and it's hard, but you kind of have to. But no, you can't enjoy the full process. You gotta enjoy the little things about it. Like, I have built a family through Wolf's Den. I've met incredible people through going to Jersey. There are some people who grind your gears every day, but they have your best interest in heart. Nah.
He's talking about me.
But
that's for sure.
But you've met people who you didn't think you'd ever click with before, and you meet a lot of intellectual people too. So, and remember, at the end of the day, every fighter is going through their own version of hell. Like, nobody in the fight game is ever going through something easy. No one. Even the coaches are going through just as much as the fighters, maybe more, because at the end of the day, we get hurt in the fight. They can put blame on us as much as we can, but realistically, the blame's going to the coach, because the fighter, no matter what, does all he can, but the coach can always do more, and that's a lot of pressure to put on one person, two people. That's a lot of pressure. Fighters could leave, fighters could stay. You know, you can build connections with them and they just leave. You can build connections with them and sometimes they don't walk out the ring. Sometimes they have to be stretched out the ring, and that has to fall on the coach a lot. So, you know, everyone's putting a piece of themselves in the sport. So the least you could do is just find the good parts about it and just stick with it.
That's a pretty great answer. I love that. The fight game doesn't stop, right? And you're constantly training, but eventually a fighter's body does, right? So what is the best plan of attack to maximize everything, maximize your career before that happens? What do you think? Where do you think a fighter should go with that?
To maximize, man, when your body starts failing on you, it I can't even lie, because that's a hard pill to swallow. Yeah, I can't lie to you. That's a hard pill to swallow. I always like to say that when my body starts failing, I'd retire. But I've been.
You have those guys that are they're past their prime, they're past their peak, and they keep going. And instead of retiring as a star, they fizzle out into the abyss.
I've been dropped in sparring. No, I've been dropped in serious sparring once.
I remember that.
No. Oh yeah, this was the Baltimore guys. The what? Yeah, that I was dropped.
I was talking about the Olympian.
I didn't get dropped.
You didn't get dropped?
No, surprising, right? Right?
You
right?
Were a lot of things. You were a lot of things, my friend.
Right? I'm surprised I didn't get dropped. The one I got dropped was getting hit in the back of the head. You see, that's to my own detriment. It took an illegal shot for me to finally fall. So, you know, I'd like to confidently say I'd probably know when to step back, but I probably won't. And that's a good likelihood. I probably won't. It'll probably take my coaches telling me, yo, you gotta stop. You're winning, but you're not winning pretty. Or you're taking more damage and you have a family. And the best course of action is to, throughout your career, manage your money properly. Because at the end of the day, in my mind anyway, you're always going to be a fighter from age 4 to 40 if anyone retires at 40, and you're going to be damaged. So the best thing for you to do is to manage your money properly so that your kids, your family can use that for better things. Because realistically, in my mind, fighting puts you in a position where you can make the most of money, but you can't use it. The people around you have to use it in a responsible way. You know, you have people who get lucky, like Floyd Mayweather, but even he would admit that, you know, the damage took a toll on him. He got hit seriously probably twice in his life, but even then, those little hits took a toll. James Toney can barely speak. Oscar De La Hoya he's just crazy.
Put some fucking respect on my name, right?
He's just crazy.
He's great. I love it.
But you know.
So you haven't really experienced a loss in. So by the way, Coach Leo and I both still own a gym, and we are. The reason that he ran out is because we have to make sure the gym stays open. That being said, he was out speaking to a potential client, making sure that we stay open by getting a sale. So I want to give a big shout out to Coach Leo for, making that. I think that probably hits the end of our stream. Anything else you want to say?
Just I'm happy to be here. I love fighting, so hopefully I can make other appearances, and hopefully we can expand this to train a bit more, we'll actually film the gym training, and so you can see more of what the vibe is here, and we can enjoy ourselves a little bit more. But besides that, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Alrighty, what's going on, y'all? I'm back here. Just had to take care of a client here. But other than that, listen, man, we do appreciate everybody that comes on. We appreciate everybody that that watches us and definitely asks questions. Killer Rose, we appreciate you, man. We definitely do. Listen, we're the Come Up podcast, and we're giving you guys the raw boxing and talking about the things that people don't really talk about, and or they don't even want to talk about or even touch. So we're here, and that's what we're here to talk about. And the journey that is going with Wolves Den, and the journey that we're on. It's one heck of a journey, and we're not gonna stop. We're gonna continue to continue to drive that car until those wheels fall off. This is what we're about, and this is what we're gonna do. So I appreciate you guys sticking with us. Like, subscribe, show love to our pages, and also, I want to give a shout out to Khalik being here. It's so much better when we're doing these things, and you can have a fighter's, perspective on things. Because sometimes there are just certain things in the fight game that maybe a coach may not understand. Especially the mentality of a fighter going into a fight. All of a sudden, you have a game plan, you're ready for these guys, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they show you something different. And Khalik is here to be, our guest to let us know how it really is and how he feels, moving forward and in this hurt business, like Killer Rosa says. So we're definitely doing everything that we can, and we won't stop. So we appreciate everybody. We love every single one of y'all that shows us love. And we'll definitely have Khalik back on the podcast. If getting it from a fighter's perspective is nothing like it. It's as raw as it gets. So we're just gonna keep moving forward, and we appreciate everybody. And we'll